He stared at the page for the last time and gave up. This man was one of the greatest cryptographers alive. And this book, this impossible, maddening book, broke him. The Voynich Manuscript, 240 pages, 38,000 words, zero translations. For over 600 years, it has defeated everyone who dared to look. Intelligence agencies studied it. Linguists built careers on it. Artificial intelligence failed spectacularly trying to crack it. And still, not one single word has been confirmed. Today, we investigate it like the cold case it truly is. We have suspects, we have motives, we have a crime that may have lasted 6 centuries without anyone noticing. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The year is 1902. A Polish book dealer named Wilfried Voynich is rummaging through a dusty villa in Italy. Among a collection of old books, he finds something that stops him cold. A manuscript unlike anything he has ever seen, filled with writing in an alphabet that does not exist. Illustrations of plants that don't exist. Astronomical diagrams that match no known system, and page after page of flowing text that looks almost like a real language, but isn't. Voynich is captivated. He purchases the manuscript and immediately begins showing it to the most brilliant minds of his era. Their reaction? Pure, absolute confusion. He names it after himself, the Voynich Manuscript, and just like that, one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries enters the modern world. But here's where the story gets interesting, because Voynich didn't just find this book. Some researchers think he may have created it. Think about it. Voynich was a hairy book dealer. His entire business depended on finding extraordinary manuscripts to sell to wealthy collectors. And what could be more valuable than a book no one can read? A book written in an unknown language, one that could never be disproven as fake, would be worth a fortune. And Voynich had the skills, the access to old vellum, and the motivation to pull it off. But here's the thing. Carbon dating in 2009 confirmed the vellum itself, dates to between Pircorte 1004 and Pircorte 38. That means Voynich couldn't have created the pages from scratch. Could he have found old blank vellum and written on it? Theoretically, yes, but to fake the ink aging, the script consistency, the statistical properties of the text across 240 pages? That's another level of genius. So let's set Voynich aside for now and follow the manuscript back further, to the one person who almost certainly owned it before anyone else, an emperor with a very strange hobby. Rudolf II, Holy Roman Emperor, was famously obsessed with the occult, alchemy, and collecting bizarre objects. His palace in Prague was essentially a 600-room museum of the weird. In 1599, someone sold Rudolf this manuscript for 600 gold coins. That is roughly $90,000 in today's money. For a book nobody could read, not bad. And who might have sold it to him? Here is where our suspect lineup gets genuinely interesting. Enter John Dee, royal astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I, and one of the most brilliant and brilliantly strange men of his era. Dee was a mathematician, a navigator, a spy, and a genuine royal advisor. He also spent years trying to communicate with angels through a colleague who claimed he could see them in a crystal ball. That colleague was Edward Kelly, con artist, forger, and one of the most audacious fraudsters of the 16th century. These two men traveled together across Europe, performing for kings and nobles. When Dee and Kelly arrived in Prague and met Rudolf, they had exactly what he wanted: mysteries and forbidden knowledge. These diary records that he traveled with a mysterious book no one could read. Was that book the Voynich Manuscript? We can't say for certain, but the timing fits. The emperor's known obsessions fit, and one con artist plus one angel talker pitching a magical book to a very gullible emperor, that fits perfectly. Now, let's talk about what's actually inside this book. Because even if you've heard of the Voynich Manuscript, what's in it is stranger than you probably think. The manuscript is divided into sections. Researchers have identified at least 6: botanical, astronomical, biological, cosmological, pharmaceutical, and recipes. each one is weirder than the last. The botanical section is perhaps the most haunting. It shows hundreds of detailed plant illustrations, roots, stems, leaves, flowers, drawn with the precision of a real medieval herbalist, except none of these plants exist. Botanists and biologists have tried for over a century to match these drawings to real species. A few tentative identifications have been proposed. Every single one has been disputed. One current theory is that these plants represent a world that existed only in the illustrator's imagination, a kind of parallel herbal from a place that never was. That's either the work of a genius or a very motivated liar. Then there's the biological section. This one is, how do we put this, memorable? It shows dozens of small naked human figures, mostly women, bathing in interconnected green pools and tubes. Nobody knows what this represents. Anatomy? Cosmology? An elaborate bathing schedule? Some researchers believe it's a map of the human body's energies. Others think it might be reproductive biology. The best answer anyone has is, we genuinely don't know. The astronomical section is equally baffling. It contains circular diagrams that look like star charts, but they don't match any known constellation system from the medieval period. And analysis of the handwriting in 2020 identified 5 different scribes at work across the manuscript, 5, all contributing to the same alien language they presumably could read and write fluently. 5 scribes, all writing in a language no one else has ever written, coordinating on an impossibly complex document. Either this was a very well-organized conspiracy, or this was a real language with real speakers. This is the central question that has tortured researchers for over a century. Is the Voynich Manuscript a real language, a coded message, or the world's most elaborate medieval prank? 3 major schools of thought have battled over this question for decades. Let's meet each one, starting with the gibberish camp. The gibberish theory says the Voynich Manuscript is complete nonsense, deliberately designed to look like meaningful writing without actually meaning anything. And here is the uncomfortable part. There is real evidence for this. Researchers recently asked volunteers to write pages of complete gibberish, random made-up writing that looked like a real language. When they analyzed the results, the statistical properties were surprisingly similar to the Voynich Manuscript. If a regular person can accidentally produce a text that mimics the Voynich Manuscript's patterns, maybe the manuscript itself is just very convincing nonsense. But then there's the language camp. Researchers who believe the manuscript is a real, lost language or dialect that simply hasn't been identified yet. Their strongest argument? The writing follows Zipf's law. Zipf's law is a mathematical pattern found in almost every natural human language, where the most common word appears roughly twice as often as the second, 3 times as often as the third, and so on. The Voynich text follows this rule almost perfectly. That is not something easy to fake, especially not across 240 pages written by 5 different scribes. Either the authors were statistical geniuses, or they were writing in a language with real grammar. And then there's the cipher camp, the group that says the manuscript is a real language, just deliberately encrypted. That under all those alien symbols is Latin or Hebrew or early Italian just waiting to be decoded. Over the decades, dozens of people have claimed to have cracked the Voynich cipher. Every single claim has failed to stand up to scrutiny. Some were embarrassingly wrong. A few were quietly forgotten by their authors. The most embarrassing may be a claim from the 1960s that the manuscript was actually a women's health manual written in a North African dialect of Arabic. This was announced with great confidence, and then thoroughly dismantled by actual Arabic scholars. Which brings us to the most exciting development in decades, a genuine peer-reviewed study published in the journal Cryptologia in November 2025. And the man behind it has a name worthy of the mystery itself, Michael Greshko. Greshko's theory starts with something delightfully medieval, dice and playing cards. In the 15th century, there existed a cipher system called the Naibe cipher, a method of encoding messages using the random values generated by rolling dice and drawing cards. Greshko spent years, including during the pandemic lockdowns, building spreadsheet models that simulated the naive cipher and applying them to the Voynich text. What he found is extraordinary. The statistical properties of text generated by the naive cipher, word length distribution, character frequency, entropy patterns match the Voynich manuscript almost exactly. Not perfectly, but close enough to be remarkable. This does not mean Greshko decoded the manuscript. He didn't. What it means is that for the first time, we have a historically plausible mechanism, a real cipher, that actually existed in the 15th century, that could explain how the manuscript was made. Think about what that means. Someone in the early 15th century, perhaps hired by D, perhaps hired by someone else entirely, sat down with this, a deck of cards, and blank vellum, and built the most resilient mystery in human history. But Greshko's work also doesn't rule out the other theories. It's entirely possible the manuscript contains a real language encoded with a naive-style cipher. We still can't read it either way. And here is where the story gets its deepest irony. Because if the naive cipher was used, it may have been designed specifically to be unbreakable without the original key. And that key has never been found. The machine learning community has tried too. Multiple research teams have applied modern neural networks and AI language models to the Voynich text. The results have been, to put it charitably, humbling. One team trained a large language model on every known historical cipher and language script from the medieval period, then unleashed it on the Voynich text. The AI confidently identified patterns, then produced translations that made no sense whatsoever. There's something almost poetic about that. We built the most powerful pattern recognition machines in human history, pointed them at a 600-year-old book, and got back gibberish, the manuscript won. So where does this leave us? We have a real manuscript on real medieval vellum, written by 5 real scribes, sold to a real emperor for a lot of real gold. We have a statistically language-like text no one can read. We have a new study showing a medieval cipher mechanism that could explain it. And we have a cast of historical characters colorful enough for a Netflix series, a queen's astrologer, a con artist medium, and the emperor who bought crystals from strangers. What we don't have, still, is a single confirmed translation. Not one word. After 600 years of the brightest minds on earth trying, the Voynich manuscript has given up exactly nothing. And here's the thing that keeps the mystery alive, the thing that researchers always come back to. The Voynich manuscript doesn't feel random. It feels deliberate. It feels like it means something. When you look at the botanical illustrations, those impossible plants, there's a care to them, a precision. Someone took time to draw those roots, those leaves, those strange, impossible flowers. That's not the work of someone scribbling nonsense. When you look at the script itself, the flowing, rounded characters that fill every page, you can almost feel the writer's rhythm, the pen moving confidently, without hesitation. Whoever wrote this believed in what they were writing. Or, and stay with me here, maybe they believed in the performance of writing it. Maybe the confidence in those pen strokes is the confidence of a very skilled faker. The Voynich manuscript is currently housed at the Beinecke Rare Book Library at Yale University. You can see high-resolution scans of every single page on their website for free. The whole world has had access to it for years. That's one of the strangest aspects of this mystery. It's completely open. Anyone with an internet connection can study the manuscript right now. Thousands of people around the world are actively working on it at this very moment. Citizen scientists, amateur historians, obsessed retirees, competitive codebreakers. This manuscript has become a kind of global open-source puzzle, the longest-running unsolved challenge in human intellectual history. And yet, nobody has cracked it. Not the geniuses, not the institutions, not the algorithms, not the passionate amateurs with their colored strings and late nights and bottomless coffee. Now, I want you to think about something, not about the manuscript, about yourself. The Voynich manuscript has survived 600 years because it sits in that perfect space between meaning and meaninglessness. We can't ignore it because it looks like it means something. We can't solve it because we can't prove it does. How many things in your own life are like that? How many things do you keep returning to because they feel meaningful, because they must mean something, even though you can't fully prove they do? The relationships you're trying to decode, the decisions you keep circling back to, the feeling that something important is just beyond your ability to articulate. The Voynich Manuscript isn't so unusual. We all carry one. And maybe that's what the creators of the Voynich Manuscript understood, whether they were sincere scholars, medieval forgers, or something in between, that a message you can't quite read is more powerful than one you can. Because the moment you fully understand something, the mystery is over. And we humans, we are addicted to the almost, the nearly cracked, the one more page away from revelation. The Voynich Manuscript is the ultimate expression of that feeling. It is humanity's longest-running almost. So what do we actually know for certain? Let's do a final tally. The velum date to 1404, 1438. That is confirmed science. The text has language-like statistical properties. That is confirmed. 5 scribes worked on it. Confirmed. Rudolf II purchased it for 600 gold coins. Confirmed. The Naib cipher can reproduce similar statistical properties. Confirmed and published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2025. What we don't know, who wrote it, what language it is if any, what the illustrations depict, whether it encodes anything real, and whether it will ever be decoded. Also confirmed, unfortunately. And yet, something tells me the manuscript is about to have a very interesting decade, because we've never had tools like the ones we have now, and we've never had as many eyes on the problem. Michael Greshko's Naib study has opened a new door. Researchers are already working on the next step, trying to use the cipher framework to actually attempt a decryption. We may be closer than we think. Or maybe the manuscript will still be sitting in the Beinecke in 2515, defeating yet another generation of the brightest minds humanity has produced. Strangely, I find that possibility equally beautiful. Because some mysteries deserve to endure, not because we're not smart enough to solve them, but because the act of chasing them, that restless, obsessive, beautifully human act of reaching for something just beyond your grasp, that's where the good stuff lives. The Voynich Manuscript doesn't just ask, what does this say? It asks something deeper. It asks, what does it mean to try to understand something, and fail, and try again? What does it mean to keep believing in the meaning of something that may have no meaning at all? That question is worth sitting with. It follows you out of this video and into your own life. Because we all have our Voynich Manuscript, the thing we can't stop trying to understand, even when every attempt falls short. The manuscript sits in its case at Yale, unchanged, patient, waiting for whoever comes next. 600 years ago, someone created something that would outlast every attempt to destroy its mystery. That's a kind of immortality. Not bad for a book nobody can read. If you found this investigation as captivating as the manuscript itself, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find the mystery. Subscribe to Epochal for a new cinematic journey through history and mystery every week. We have more cold cases, legendary battles, and impossible stories coming your way very soon. And if you want to go deeper, and I know you do, next week we're following the story of the cipher itself, the dice, the playing cards, and the medieval cryptographer who may have designed the most perfectly unbreakable code in history. You don't want to miss that one. The Voynich Manuscript is still out there, still waiting, still impossible. And so is the question it quietly asks every single person who encounters it. Are you brave enough to keep trying even when you know you might never have the answer? Some things are worth chasing forever. This has been Epochal. See you next week. Before you go, one last thought to carry with you. Every person who has ever tried to decode the Voynich Manuscript has changed because of the attempt, not because they found answers, but because the questions rewired how they see everything else. The best mysteries don't give you answers, they give you better questions. And sometimes a better question is the only map you ever needed. This was Epochal, the Voynich Manuscript. 600 years, 0 answers, and counting. Subscribe, stay curious, and we will see you on the other side of the next mystery.